What's the most hilarious thing your dad has ever said? Before we start, comment at what time you're watching this video right now. Alright, on to the stories. 1. My dad was an oncologist and dealt with dying patients all the time. One day, one of his nurses came to him looking really worried and said Ms. Jones was seeing birds flying in circles above her. He looked into her room and saw her staring up at the ceiling, pretty out of it from the pain meds. "Hey, Ms. Jones, I hear you're seeing birds flying around." "Yeah. Are they vultures?" "No." "All right then, you're good." He loved corny jokes and had an amazing sense of humor and bedside manner. His patients absolutely loved him. Reply: My dad had a small stroke and was being checked out by a resident in the ER. The resident picked up a pen and said, "Do you know what I can do with this?" My dad, who really did not want to be there, said, "I could tell you, but it wouldn't be very polite." 2. He took me out to lunch and I ordered something kind of pricey. He jumped a little in his seat and said, "Sorry, my wallet just bit me in the ass." 3. I'll go. I was playing Monopoly with my dad. I was probably around 11. I drew that card that says, "You got second place in a beauty contest. Collect $10. He looks at me and says, "Yeah, and the dog got first." 4. Don't kiss mom goodnight on my birthday. I didn't understand what he meant until years later. 5. When my dad woke up from a 2-day induced coma after a stroke, the doctor asked him, "Who is the current prime minister?" My dad answered confidently, "Joseph Goebbels." 6. Pasta was boiling over in the kitchen, and I said, "Mom, I think your noodles are done." My dad walked in right as I said it and said very calmly, "Chrissy, your mother's noodles were done a long time ago." 7. My dad, an older English gentleman, drove a vintage BMW Z3. He only drove it in the summer with the top down and his little driving cap on. He was stopped at a red light when some guys pulled up next to him and said, "That's a girl's car." He replied in his English accent, "Sorry boys, it's not for sale." Another favorite moment was when my brother-in-law asked my dad for my sister's hand in marriage. My dad just said no return policy. 8. My father is by far the least funny person in our family. My brother and I were in our early 20s and eating dinner. My brother grabs a pair of panties and throws them across the table and says, "Your girlfriend left her underwear here." I throw them back and say, "Nope, those are your girlfriend's." We keep tossing them back and forth. My mom yells, "Boys, stop it. That is my underwear." My dad stretches them out and says, "The magic of modern fibers." My brother and I were on the floor laughing. 9. One time my dad came flying up behind us on his four-wheeler and slammed on the brakes. We all turned around and gave him serious what the hell looks. He just said, "I'm old," and then drove off, kicking up a bunch of gravel. 10. Whenever my friends and I were playing D&D in the 90s, my dad would come downstairs and, in a voice full of sarcasm, say, "Oh, no dates tonight?" Then he'd walk away laughing to himself. It always made me laugh, even when it was true. If you're still watching, it means you're enjoying the stories. Subscribe so you can look forward to more stories like these. Now on to 11. I would honestly rather be tied to a chair and beaten with a brick stick than go shopping. That's a nice car. Too bad it didn't come with turn signals. Have you ever tried walking like this? Then he proceeds to do a full Ministry of Silly Walks routine through the mall. I'm sitting behind the guy in red, at a football game where both teams were wearing red. "Fish live in the water, squirrels live in the trees," said while calmly trolling over to untangle my line from yet another tree. I loved my dad. Reply: Kind of like the red shirt one. My dad was driving across the country, and I called him a few hours into the trip and asked where he was. "Oh, we just passed a McDonald's." He really enjoyed that I laughed. 12. This one is easy. My dad was a very reserved man. I never once heard him swear. He grew up poor, worked his way through college, and ended up successful. I was about 20, and we went on a bike ride through a rich neighborhood full of old money mansions. Beautiful day, quiet, right by a lake. We rode past a guy sitting by the water in a lawn chair. My dad cheerfully said hello. The guy looked at him like stone and said nothing. We went maybe 20 feet, and my dad suddenly yelled, "Hello, you son of a bitch!" I almost fell off my bike laughing. 13. My father only ever listened to country music, and if it wasn't George Jones, then it wasn't really country. The big station in town was called Soft Rock. I asked him, "Don't you like any rock music at all? Even soft rock?" He gave me that look and said, "Son, you ever been hit in the head with a soft rock?" 14. My dad could calm down almost any situation. My mom was watching a coworker's kid, and I came over for dinner. When I got there, I asked where the kid was. Mom said he was playing downstairs, so we went to get him. Then we heard a loud, "Huh." Dad and I ran downstairs, and my mom was almost in tears. The kid had colored almost the entire white love seat with a red marker. As soon as we got there, she angrily asked him why he colored the couch red. The kid looked absolutely terrified. Then my dad said, "Well, we don't have any blue markers." Even my mom started laughing. He knelt down, looked the kid in the eyes, and told him they were getting rid of the couch anyway, but that you don't mess with things that aren't yours. The kid nodded, and my dad gave him a hug. My mom instantly switched into IW mode. She watched the kid a few more times after that, and said he was an angel. He grew up to be a great guy too. I love and miss my dad every day. 15. My younger brother Timmy and my sister Sally are twins. On the day of my high school graduation, I picked the restaurant we were going to. My brother was loudly complaining about it. My dad fired back at him, "Stop complaining. It's your sister's graduation and she gets to choose. When it's your turn to graduate, we'll go wherever Sally wants." 16. I bought him a GPS one Christmas, but it didn't work. When we went to return it, the store said they were out of stock, but another store a few miles away had one and would do the exchange. My dad said, "How am I supposed to get there without a GPS?" 17. You make a better door than a window. Said while I was standing in front of the TV. 18. I needed help around the house because of a health issue. One morning he asked me how to make coffee, so I showed him how to use the French press, including grinding the beans. He watched very carefully. When I finished, I said, "Got it?" He leaned in a bit, put his hand on my shoulder, and said very gently, "Hey, fruck that, okay?" Then he walked a few blocks and bought me a normal coffee maker and a huge tub of Folgers. What a guy. 19. One time my mom yelled at my dad when he picked me up smelling like alcohol and said, "You're a drunken bum." My dad calmly replied, "I am not a bum." We laughed about that for years. R.I.P. Mom and Dad. I miss you both so much. 20. As long as I can remember, he called me Hemorrhoid and my younger brother Hemorrhoid Helper. When I was about 10 or 12, I saw a Preparation H commercial and finally understood. I laughed for days. Also, for as long as I can remember, he always said, "The only dating advice I'll give you is this. If you're not in bed by 10 p.m., you might as well come home." Around 12 or 13, I finally realized what that advice actually meant. 21. Do yourself a favor and buy a nice stereo, a nice TV, and a nice surround sound system before you get married. Because after you're married, all your money is going to go to stupid shit like curtains and couches. 22. He called me yesterday crying because he got an email saying my 5-year-old brother needs someone in the nuts for cutting in the lunch line. I have never heard my dad laugh that hard in my life, let alone cry from laughing. My brother is a really good kid too, so it was totally unexpected. 23. When I was about 8, I asked for my own color TV. I'm old. My dad said he would buy me a black and white TV and a box of crayons so I could color it however I wanted. 24. Not my dad, but my friend's dad. We were about 13, and this was in the late 70s. My friend's dad was very serious, very quiet, and no nonsense. One day we were in the front yard watching a small car accident at the corner when his fancy new Casio watch alarm went off. Without skipping a beat, he lifted his wrist to his mouth and said, "I told you I'm not interested in any more missions," then went back to watching the accident like nothing happened. I had no idea what to think. Was this real? Did he actually have a Dick Tracy watch? Was he a spy? Then my friend started laughing, and I realized it was a joke. Years later, when I was an adult, I got to know his dad better and realized that even though he was quiet, he had a dark, sharp sense of humor. I asked him if he remembered the watch thing, but sadly he didn't. 25. My dad was trying to quote the line from Mean Girls, "Get in, loser, we're going shopping." Instead, he said, "Get in the car, bish." 26. One time my dad stared at a frozen pizza, kinda shrugged, and said, "If you think about it, this is basically a salad if you eat it while standing up and do it really fast." 27. I was around 10 and wanted to listen to my boombox, but there was no free outlet in the living room. I asked my dad to unplug the TV so I could use that socket, and he said no. I asked him what I was supposed to do instead, and he said, "I don't know, stick it in your butt and hum, but I'm watching the TV." 28. For context, my family nickname is Jane. My mom said, "Jane is going to see Aerosmith." My dad, without missing a beat, said, "Jane can dream on." 29. My dad once told me that before you criticize anyone, you should walk a mile in their shoes, because then you'd be a mile away and you'd have their shoes. I still laugh when I think about it, mostly because I remember how proud of that joke he was. 30. One day you'll meet a woman who feels so perfect and so right that you won't even argue about the price. 31. One evening, while I was getting ready to go out, my dad asked where I was going. I said I was going out with all my friends. He replied, "Where are you two going?" 32. After I spent over an hour doing my makeup and fixing and refixing my hair until I finally felt ready to leave, he looked at me and said, "Aren't you going to brush your hair before you go?" 33. My dad once watched a squirrel bury a nut and said, "That little guy has a better retirement plan than I do." I think about that every time I check my 401k. 34. He came out of a gas station bathroom, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "The cleanest thing in there was what I was holding." 35. I got into a fight at school that couldn't really be avoided. After my mom finished yelling at me, my dad said, "Yeah, but did you win though?" 36. I was riding in the car with my dad and tried to roll the window down, but the button wouldn't work. I messed with it for a bit and said, "Dad, I think this thing is child-proof." Without even looking, he said, "Nope, just idiot-proof." 37. He called every boyfriend I ever had Jared. "Nice to meet you, Jared. I've heard good things about you, Jared." "Jared, you gonna have my girl home by 9? This caused a lot of awkwardness and arguments because the guys thought I was messing with them, and they acted weird on the first few dates. I have never dated a Jared. Looking back, it's actually hilarious, and my dad was great for it. Miss you. 38. He once told me I was about as useful as tits on a boar. 39. Not my dad, but my papa. He and my granny had been divorced for years, but they still got together for holidays with the whole family. She was talking about how she wasn't going to eat dessert. He asked why. She said, "I've been on a diet. I lost 15 pounds. He leaned back, looked at her ass, and said, "Well, I found it. Funniest shit ever." 40. I showed my dad a picture of a beautiful antique wedding dress I wanted for my wedding. The model in the picture was holding a small fishbowl with a goldfish in it. My dad said, "Well, sweetheart, I'm not sure we can get you the dress, but the fish is yours." 41. Not the funniest one, but the one I probably used the most. When someone hands you a plate of food, politely say, "This looks fit for a king." Then hold the plate down low, do a dog whistle, and say, "Here, king. Here, boy." 42. This one is actually my mom's dad, my grandpa. He had just come home from open-heart surgery and was resting in his recliner in the living room. I was a newborn at the time, and my mom, who was very petite and skinny as a rail, was trying to breastfeed me. My grandpa opened one eye, lifted his head a little, and said, "That baby is going to starve to death on them acorns." Then he closed his eye and went back to sleep. My mom still isn't over it. 43. The worst job I ever had was being a parent, said during a conversation about terrible jobs. It was really funny, and we still quote it all the time. 44. He had a bumper sticker on his car that said, "My other ride is your mom," which for me was technically true, I guess. That's all for now. Don't forget to subscribe so I can keep bringing you more of these stories. Thanks for sticking around till the end. See you next time, and take care.